First, they tough. Then something happened to them. They turn to God. Then, when everything's cool, they tough again. I don't understand it. It gets real confusing to me. And if I hear one more rapper talk about Versace, Dolce & Gabbana, leave it alone. It's over, y'all. It's no more. It's finished. I started it and I'm ending it. It's over.
Yeah, my album, Me Against the World, was the second one. He had the first one. I changed everything because Ready to Die came out and it sounded like my album. The next time I saw him was at the studio where I got shot. So I knew he knew what happened. So I was like, Biggie, what happened? He kept sending me messages like a, you know, like I'm gonna come see you. No, what happened? While I'm in jail, strangers is telling me, yo, you don't know? Biggie homeboy shot you.
The Tupac article had me pissed off, you know what I'm saying? And the rumors that's spreading is on some tip like we set him up, you know what I'm saying? And that's crazy. It's just ridiculous, you know what I'm saying? But I also understand that if you was to get shot 5 times, the mind is just completely spinning, you know what I'm saying? You're real confused about your situation. So it'll cause you to say things that you really don't mean.
Any artist out there want to be an artist and want to stay a star and don't want to have to worry about the executive producer trying to be all in the videos, all on the record, dancing, come to Death Row.
You claim to be a player, but I f***ed your wife.
Which of those 4 is it when you talk to him about murdering Tupac?
It was really about both of them. Either one. It was
Tupac and Suge, you mean?
Yeah.
What's up, girl?
Where y'all going?
About to go to the club.
Can me and my homegirl go too?
Hell yeah.
We're going to 662. Fall in.
Follow us.
So it's Pharrell, you, Puffy, Zip, and a bunch of Southsiders. And what Puffy makes kind of an announcement?
Yeah. He said he'd give us anything for them dudes there, you know?
In 1984, a kid from Harlem, New York named Tupac Shakur would move to Baltimore at the age of 13, where he would attend the Paul Laurence High School. When he was in the 10th grade, he would be transferred to the Baltimore School for the Arts, where he studied acting, poetry, and music. Throughout the mid to late 80s, hip-hop music would become one of the top genres in the world, and gangsta rap would also become a mainstream success. In 1988, Tupac moved again, this time to Marin City, California, where he would attend Tamalpais High School performing in theater productions. At first, Tupac's sights were set on becoming an actor, but with the rise of hip-hop, he also had an interest at becoming a rapper himself. Tupac would drop out of high school and decided to begin recording music under the stage name MC New York. Pac would begin attending Leila Steinberg's poetry classes, and she soon would become his manager. In March of 1989, Tupac and Ray Love would form the rap group called Strictly Dope. A lot of the music Pac did with Strictly Dope would go unreleased before the group eventually dissolved in 1990. Some of the tracks they recorded would end up releasing later in 2007 on a project called Beginnings, The Lost Tapes, 1988 to 1991. In 1990, Steinberg would manage to get Pac signed by Atrin Gregory, who managed the rap group Digital Underground. Tupac would become their roadie and backup dancer. It would be on the track Same Song, released in January of 1991, where he would officially debut the stage name Tupac under Interscope Records. In the late 80s, an MC in Brooklyn, New York, named Christopher Wallace, began performing on the streets of Brooklyn, freestyling under the rap name MC C West. While he was MCing, he would sell drugs on the side, getting involved in crime in the city. By the age of 17, he dropped out of high school, and that year, he would be arrested on a weapons charge in Brooklyn, being sentenced to 5 years of probation. In 1990, he was arrested once again for violating his probation and eventually was thrown in jail for selling drugs. Wallace would spend 9 months in jail, eventually making bail, and it would be after his release that he sought out to find a better life instead of getting involved in weapons and drugs. This is when he would really begin chasing his passion for hip-hop music, adopting a new stage name, Biggie Smalls, aka the notorious B.I.G. He began recording demo tapes in 1991. Mr. C, who was the DJ for Big Daddy Kane and the Juice Crew, would eventually discover it, so he would begin spreading it around. While Biggie was gaining traction in New York, that same year, on November 12th, 1991, Tupac dropped his debut studio album, Tupacalypse Now. The album would reach number 64 on the Billboard 200, and this is when hip-hop would be put on notice that Tupac was here, and he didn't shy away from showing his incredible lyricism, conveying political messages about social issues that America was facing, like racism, poverty, police brutality, etc. The next year, in March of 1992, Biggie would be featured in the Source magazine's Unsigned Hype column. This is when A&R of Uptown Records, Sean Puffy Combs, would arrange to have a meeting with Biggie. On July 14th, 1992, Biggie would sign to Uptown, appearing on tracks with some of his label mates. It would be in 1992 that Tupac and Biggie would officially meet for the first time. But how exactly did they meet? Some say that they met on the set of Poetic Justice in the summer of 1993, but that doesn't add up, considering that movie dropped in the summer of 1993. The real story of how Biggie and Tupac met was in LA in 92. Biggie would ask a drug dealer to introduce him to Pac, to which Pac would then invite Biggie and his crew to a party at his house, and the two would kick it. Tupac even gifted Biggie a bottle of Hennessy. This would officially be the beginning of their friendship. The two had mutual respect for each other as artists and liked each other's music. Now, at this time, Tupac was already getting himself established, with his debut album selling hundreds of thousands of copies, and he already had starred in the movie Juice, which was released in January of 1992 and would become a cult classic. On the other hand, Biggie was not really known outside of New York, as he hadn't even dropped his debut single, let alone his debut album. Biggie and Pac became really close. When Big was in LA, Pac would let him crash on his couch, and when Pac was in New York, he would stop by Biggie's neighborhood. According to Yuckmouth from Loonies, Biggie's style was heavily inspired by Tupac. On February 16, 1993, Tupac dropped his second album, Strictly For My, which would sell 38,000 copies in the first week, reaching number 24 on the Billboard 200. In 93, Tupac and Biggie would perform together at shows, along with Tupac's homie Stretch. Pac and Big would freestyle together on a couple of different occasions. One at MSG at a concert that Big Daddy Kane and DJ Mr. C had when Big and Pac went on stage to deliver a classic freestyle. Another one where Biggie and Pac were having drinks together at a table backstage. The duo of Pac and Biggie was very much unmatched, with Pac's poetry and Biggie's lyricism and flow. In the summer of 93 is when Biggie would burst onto the scene with his debut single. Back in 92, MCA Records and Uptown Records signed a $50 million deal, which saw Uptown producing the soundtrack for the movie Who's the Man. Puffy, being responsible for the soundtrack, would call onto his newly signed artist, Biggie Smalls. Big would record his debut major label single called Party and Bullshit at Soundtrack Studios in New York. The producer of the track, Easy Mo B, said that Big recorded the track in one take. The track would officially be released as a single on June 29th, 1993. Tupac would ask Biggie to join his group Thug Life, which was formed in 92. Biggie turned down the offer, instead deciding to stick with his own crew, which would later be known as Junior Mafia. Junior Mafia were all close childhood friends from Brooklyn, with members such as Lil Cease, Lil Kim, Nino Brown, and more. After becoming close friends, performing together, freestyling together, and traveling together, in late 93, Biggie and Tupac hit the studio. This comes at a time where Biggie was working on his debut album for the newly launched Bad Boy Records called Ready to Die, and Tupac was working on a couple of different things, like his own solo work and his album with Thug Life. There's only a couple of tracks where these two collaborated on that we would know of. One is called House of Pain, which was actually supposed to appear on Biggie's debut album, Ready to Die, but would be scrapped from the album. Another track called Running from the Police, which was set to be released on Tupac's next album, which would be shelved in '94 and later became Me Against the World, and also set to appear on Thug Life's debut album, Thug Life Volume 1, being scrapped on both occasions. Sadly, in the year of 1994, this great friendship would come to a screeching halt. Throughout Tupac's career up to this point, he had a lot of issues with his label. Interscope and another label he signed to called Jive thought Tupac's music wasn't really marketable, so every time he went to turn in his album, he had to rework some of the songs. His 1992 album, Thug Style, would never see the light of day because the label told him that the music or sound was not marketable, and no label wanted to work with an unmarketable artist. He also scrapped 50% of his second album, Strictly For My, which was originally titled Troublesome. In '93, he would begin working on his third album, which was originally titled Mr. Middle Finger. The problem was that no label was really willing to give Pac a chance. The only one who was willing would be Eazy-E, who was the founder of Ruthless Records. Pac and Eazy were friends, so as Pac was seeking to get a record label behind him, he thought there wouldn't be anyone better but Eazy, because Eazy is a gangsta. He's not going to care about marketability, like most of the corporate labels will. In '93, this would never come to be, because Eazy-E's wife, Tamika Woods, thought Pac's music just wasn't good. And also, Tupac had his ongoing assault case, to which he was charged with in late '93. Tupac had negative press surrounding the assault case, which he allegedly sexually assaulted a female named Ayanna Jackson in his hotel room in New York. Jerry Heller told Eazy that signing Pac would be a bad move. He was going to cause problems, and he is possibly facing 4.5 years in prison. Jerry thought it wouldn't make sense to sign a guy who was possibly going to jail. It would just be a waste of money. Plus, Eazy wasn't really interested in signing Pac's group Thug Life, because in '93, he signed Bone Thugs and Harmony, so why sign Thug Life? On top of that, Tupac also felt as if Bone Thugs and Harmony were copying him by having the word thug in their name.
I know people looking on TV, they going, wait a minute, didn't I already hear a group called Thug something? I already heard about some kind of thug something on TV. Who is Thug Life? But this the original. We are the original thugs. I want to be real again. That's why tripping that they can't handle the funk. Talk all that and run to the trunk. You ain't no gangster. You ain't no gangster if you woof it up and then the fight come to you and then you run for some ammunition.
According to Tamika Woods, Tupac pulled up to Eazy-E's house to get signed to Ruthless, but Eazy-E allegedly told him no, then shut the door in his face. Late '93 and '94 were pretty bad times for Tupac, being accused of sexual assault and struggling to find a label that would give him a chance. On the flip side, 1994 would be the year that Biggie would blow up, beginning the rollout for his debut studio album, Ready to Die. On August 9th, 1994, Biggie dropped the first single from the album, a track called Juicy. This song was an instant success, peaking at number 27 on the US Billboard Hot 100, and after this, the world was now ready for the notorious B.I.G. to drop his debut album. On September 13th, 1994, the notorious B.I.G. dropped his debut studio album, Ready to Die. The album would peak at number 15 on the Billboard 200 charts, shipping 57,000 units in the first week. This project was definitely a slow burner because it wouldn't explode immediately upon release, but it would be certified gold 2 months after its release. This classic album comes at a time where the New York hip-hop scene was the most competitive it's ever been, with everyone wanting the crown as the King of New York. That same month, on September 26, 1994, Thug Life dropped their one and only studio album, Thug Life Volume 1. But in November of 1994, tragedy was looming for Tupac. A year prior, in November of 1993, Tupac would meet a man named Haitian Jack at Scores in New York, where they watched the second Riddick Bowe versus Evander Holyfield boxing fight. They watched the fight in the VIP room, where Haitian Jack gave Pac a bottle of Remy Martin and Cuban cigars. Pac said, quote, "Wow, man, this is the life," being fascinated with the rich lifestyle that Haitian Jack was presenting to him, because at the time, Pac wasn't necessarily rich yet. He hadn't really blown up as an artist, but was certainly on the cusp of stardom, and everyone around him knew it. Hailing from East Flatbush, Brooklyn, Haitian Jack was a big-time drug dealer in the 80s and 90s during the crack epidemic, making a ton of money in the streets. Haitian Jack was highly respected in the streets of New York, but eventually, Jack would want his hand in the music business to clean up the dirty money he was getting and to expand beyond the streets. After their first meeting at Scores in late 93, Haitian Jack would tell Pac to contact him when he's in the area, and from there, the two would become close friends. During that time, Tupac was in New York mostly for the filming for the movie Above the Rim, and the character he was playing named Birdie was a gangster from New York, very similar to Haitian Jack. One day, Tupac said to me, "I'm glad I met you when I did, because it really helped with the character I was working on." Then I said, "You got something from me?" He was like, "Yeah, man, just your swagger, the way you handle yourself, how everybody's always around you. That was important for me to see that happens, that people gravitate to a gangster." Tupac was infatuated with the gangsters in New York after he started hanging around them a lot more. Haitian Jack would also introduce Pac to another gangster in New York who was having his hand in the music business, James Rosemond, aka Jimmy Henchman. Haitian Jack and his guys took Pac shopping. Quote, "I used to dress in baggies and sneakers. They took me shopping. That's when I bought my Rolex and all my jewels. They made me mature. They introduced me to all these gangsters in Brooklyn." Biggie, of course, knew of Haitian Jack and Jimmy Henchman, so when he heard that Tupac was now getting involved with them, he actually had a conversation with Pac about it. He told Pac to stay away from these guys and that they will only bring him trouble, but Tupac, being a hothead, would not take Biggie's advice. Biggie was really trying to look after Pac. He didn't want to see anything happen to him, but Tupac's ignorance to Biggie, who told him to stay away from Haitian Jack and Jimmy Henchman, would come back to bite him. Tupac was hanging out with a 19-year-old woman named Ayanna Jackson when the two met at a Manhattan club called Nell's, where the two hooked up. A few nights later, Haitian Jack told Pac that Ayanna Jackson was coming back over to hang out in Pac's room on the 38th floor of the Parker Meridian Hotel. Biggie was actually present, waiting to accompany Tupac to a show in New Jersey, but after Ayanna Jackson arrived, Biggie didn't like the vibe, so he left. Allegedly, Biggie left a couple of his guns in the hotel room. When Tupac, his road manager Charles Fuller, and another man arrived, they all hung out. Tupac and Ayanna Jackson then reportedly were in the hotel bedroom alone when two other men entered and proceeded to assault her. Tupac said that when the two men entered the room, he felt weirded out by the group setting, so he left, allegedly having no involvement of what took place that night. Pac then talked to his publicist in another room, feeling groggy, so he went to sleep. Then awoke to Jackson yelling at him for allowing them to assault her. Tupac would spend 1994 proclaiming his innocence while his relationship with Haitian Jack had deteriorated at this point. Pac also started looking at Biggie a little differently. The fact that Biggie was there before he arrived and all this occurred, it seemed like a setup in the eyes of Pac. Also, Tupac got charged with weapons possession that night, not only for his own guns, but also the guns that Biggie had left in the hotel room. Tupac had to rethink who he was surrounding himself with, but Biggie was not trying to set him up. It was just a misunderstanding, but Pac didn't see it that way. Tupac was a hothead who spoke from the heart. If he felt something was off, he was going to say it, whether or not it was true. Whatever Pac feels, he expresses, exactly the reason why his music is so poetic. Pac didn't jump the gun on Biggie yet, because Biggie had nothing to do with this assault case. I mean, if anything, if Pac listened to Biggie and stayed away from Haitian Jack in the first place, this all would have been prevented. Pac thought perhaps Biggie was trying to eliminate the competition because hip-hop was so competitive back then. Everyone wanted to be number one. Part of the reason why we got some of the best hip-hop music ever in the 90s. This assault case ate away at Pac. The thought of being remembered as a guy who assaults women haunted him. On top of fighting his own demons, his life would ultimately be ruined until he proves his innocence, because walking around with that label made it difficult for him to make a living. His music career was slowing down, and if you thought no label wanted nothing to do with him before the assault case, it was even worse after. No one wanted to promote or push his music after this case would go public. He wasn't allowed to even go to certain cities to perform. Pac felt as if the odds were completely stacked against him after being falsely accused of assault. That's why his next album, he decided to name it Me Against the World, because it was truly Tupac versus the world. His trial was set to begin in November of 1994, over a full year since the incident took place. And on November 29th, 1994, outside of the court, he would deliver one of his most iconic interviews ever when he spoke about the case live on TV. During the interview, he would ask where his co-defendants are, questioning why he's the one getting all the flack for this when he didn't even do anything. This was a clear reference to Haitian Jack, who was supposed to be Pac's co-defendant fighting this case with him, but instead, he had a separate trial. This gave Pac the idea that Haitian Jack was allegedly ratting him out and betraying him for not being by his side. Through the press, he would refer to Haitian Jack as a hanger-on.
Okay, so she wasn't prepared for what happened. So where are those people that did this? They were all in the same hotel as me. They were all right in the same room with me. Why am I the only one in court right now? Why is the cameras all on me? And in the report and all these charges, I didn't do nothing. I'm charged with being in concert with some guys. Well, where they at? Why me? Because I'm Tupac. No, I'm not angry at them. I'm angry at the system. I don't want nobody else to go to jail. You know what I'm saying? But I don't want to go to jail for something I didn't do. You know what I'm saying? I just don't want to be the scapegoat. I want to be, only way I've been practicing my whole life to live my life is to be responsible for what I do. I don't know how to be responsible for what every black male did. I don't know. Yes, I am going to say that I'm a thug. That's because I came from the gutter and I'm still here.
Haitian Jack would speak on this years later during a special called Hip Hop Uncovered, saying, Pac was all good when I was doing things for him until we caught that punk case that easily could have been beaten by both of us. He let his attorneys turn him against me, and that's the part I'll never forgive him for, because I'm gonna ride or die with you. I expect you to do the same. See, that's what I call a fair weather friend. Haitian Jack was offended that Pac called him a hanger-on, so everyone around Jack wanted to make a statement and do something to Pac. Haitian Jack told him nothing is gonna happen to him unless he says. Haitian Jack didn't want to hurt or kill Pac. He didn't think what Pac said was worth doing anything to him and told his crew to let it go. But there was one guy out of the crowd who had something to prove, and that man was none other than Jimmy Henchman. Henchman didn't like how Pac was speaking about Haitian Jack publicly, alluding that Jack was a snitch. Jimmy Henchman wanted to teach Tupac a lesson and teach him to respect Haitian Jack and himself. Jimmy had actually planned this attack days in advance, but he thought now would be the time to move forward with a setup play. Haitian Jack never gave anyone the green light. He didn't want anything to happen to Pac. He thought his comments didn't warrant a shooting, but Henchman, who was a part of the same team as Haitian Jack, thought otherwise. Henchman never intended on shooting or harming Tupac, though his plan was just to rough him up and rob him to get back all the jewelry that Haitian Jack had given him, plus his own jewelry. After leaving the courthouse on the evening of November the 29th, 1994, Tupac was invited by DJ Ron G to record with him. Pac usually charges fees to do collaborations, but he never charges his homies, so this one was free as a favor for DJ Ron G. Tupac and his crew of his manager Freddie Moore, Zay Turner, and his homie Stretch, aka Big Stretch, would drive to Ron G's house to record. Big Stretch was one of Tupac's closest homies and had been down with him since day one, before Pac even started rapping or starring in films. Stretch was one of Pac's heaters and always backed him up. No matter the circumstances, he would fight with Pac. When they arrived, Pac would lay down a very eerie verse on a track that would be called The Heat. During the recording sessions, Pac was constantly getting paged, so he seemed nervous. The verse Pac laid down would completely predict what would happen at Quad Studios in the following hours.
I think it's trying to kill me. Spitting hollow points till they drill me.
He even said that they're sending armies out to bomb him, which is eerie, considering the fact that the men who shot him that night were dressed in army fatigues.
Trying to be strong, they sending armies out to bomb me.
Tupac was clearly paranoid when recording this verse. He felt it in his gut that something wasn't right that night. His gut instincts proved to be true, because Jimmy Henchman would page Pac to do a song with a rapper that he was representing, Little Sean. Jimmy, being a convicted drug trafficker and had been charged with second-degree murder, was trying to get in the music business to make a legit living. The eerie part about this is that Henchman literally booked this studio for Tupac to record in days before, whilst Pac had no knowledge of this whatsoever. So this setup was well planned out, and Jimmy Henchman was about to carry out the robbery. Henchman offered Pac $7,000 to lay the wax, to which Pac could not refuse at the time since he was spending a fortune on his ongoing legal battle with Ayanna Jackson. Pac would agree, and he was given the location of the studio, Quad Studios at 723 7th Avenue between 48th and 49th Street in Times Square. What made the situation even more weird was that Biggie, Puffy, and the rest of Junior Mafia were already at the studio recording for their upcoming album, Conspiracy. After Pac was finished recording with DJ Ron G, him and his homies decided that they were going to go to Quad Studios to record with Little Sean. Pac and Stretch didn't have a good feeling about this. I mean, Pac was beefing with Haitian Jack, telling him that he's never going to talk to him again, and after this whole thing with the assault case, all of a sudden, Jack's associate, Jimmy Henchman, wants to do a song. It seemed like a setup in the eyes of Pac and Stretch, but Pac couldn't really turn down an easy $7,000. Tupac, along with his manager Freddie Moore, his common-law brother Zay Turner, and Stretch would jump in the car and head to Quad Studios. Pac stopped to get some weed before heading to the studio, which angered Henchman that Pac was taking longer than he should have, so Henchman called Pac again.
Yo, where you at? Why you ain't coming? I'm coming, hold on.
Then shortly after, Tupac would call Jimmy Henchman back to ask for directions to the Quad Studios, but this is when tensions were rising, when Henchman would claim that he doesn't have the money, which is just suspicious. Tupac would immediately crash out on Jimmy Henchman during this phone call, cursing him out.
Yo, I need the directions. Where is it at? I don't have the money. If you don't have the money, I'm not coming, you little sucker. You ass motherfucker. You punk motherfucker. You New York better have my fucking money when I get there.
Jimmy hung up, so now Pac was pissed, feeling as if his time was wasted. After this phone call, Jimmy felt real disrespected, so that's when Jimmy Henchman would officially give the green light. So he ordered a man whose name would go unknown and another man named Dexter Isaac to teach Tupac a lesson.
What's up, rude boy? Are you in New York? Yeah, I just got back in town. Star, me need to chat with you right away. Come by the spot on South Oxford and Clinton Hill. We'll talk. Aight, me soon come.
The unknown man then pulled up in his Lexus with a man named Lorenzo Fat Cat Davis in the front seat. Dexter hopped in the back seat and immediately was told that Jimmy needed him to do a job, and that job was robbing Tupac. Jimmy needs you to do a job for him. He wants you to rob rapper Tupac and teach him a lesson in respect. Why? Jimmy made a deal for Tupac to do a song with one of his artists, Little Sean. What happened? He agreed to pay Tupac $7,000, but he wanted to give him a check. Tupac wanted cash, and Jimmy refused, so Tupac started calling him all kind of hoes and pussies and bitches. He told Jimmy, "You New York better have my cash when I get there, so what's in it for me? You get to keep all the jewelry from the robbery, except for the big diamond ring, plus he'll give you another $2,500 to pay your people for helping." The unknown man then started running down all of Pac's jewelry. He knew this because Haitian Jack was the one who took him shopping in the Diamond District in New York City. The big ring that Pac had was worth $35,000. The small one was worth $20,000. A Rolex, which is the same one that Haitian Jack gifted him, worth $20,000. Several gold chains and bracelets. They then arrived at the spot where Dexter would meet up with Spunk and JD, two members of his crew that he put in positions to inform them about the robbery, to which they were on board. Dexter gave JD a .45 caliber pistol and Spunk a 9mm. He was strapped with the 9 himself. They then hopped in the car, putting the weapons in the stash box, and followed the unknown man in a Lexus heading to Quad Studios. When they got to the Quad Studios, Dexter wanted to holler at Jimmy, so Jimmy told him to come upstairs and leave everyone else in the lobby. When Dexter got out of the elevator, henchmen greeted him. Dexter was shocked to see Biggie and Lil Cease on a sofa, Little Sean in a vocal booth, and Puffy talking to someone. Dexter asked Jimmy Henchman how many people know what's about to go down, to which Jimmy nodded his head in Puffy's direction, saying that he knows. So Puffy was 100% aware that Tupac was about to get robbed that night. Jimmy gave Dexter the instructions, telling them not to kill him, just rough him up and take his stuff. Henchman then called Pac, telling him that he will get him his money, claiming that he spoke to the founder of Uptown Records, Andre Harrell, on the phone to make sure he gets the money. But this was a lie, because according to Dexter Isaac, Andre Harrell was at Quad Studios the whole time. This was Henchman's way of calming Pac down in order to lure him to Quad Studios. Henchman would mess up his lie because on the phone, he also said he's going to give Pac the $7,000 out of his own pocket, but this was just so suspicious because he called Pac earlier saying he doesn't have it, so how did $7K magically appear in his pockets? He was supposed to pay him out of pocket the whole time anyway, so this definitely raised some eyebrows in Tupac's entourage. Pac needed the money, so he agreed to head over to the studio, not knowing he was stepping into a trap. After hours of waiting, it's now November 30th at 12:16 a.m. Tupac and his crew had finally arrived at Quad Studios. They parked the car in a parking garage at 148 West 48th Street and walked around the corner to the studio on 7th Avenue. 9 minutes later, they were out front the studio, but on a floor above, a small terrace on the 10th floor overlooking 48th Street, were a couple of members of Biggie's group Junior Mafia, most notably Lil Cease, who hollered at Pac to come up and say what's up. Tupac was now more relaxed, knowing his homie Lil Cease was here. Cease and Junior Mafia loved Tupac, always greeting him when he was in Brooklyn. Cease would then inform Biggie and the rest that Pac was here, so Biggie told him to go get Pac. As Pac was walking in the studio, he saw a suspicious guy dressed in army fatigues with boots smoking a cigarette, but the man just glanced at him quickly, then looked away. This was a bit strange to Tupac, who went on to say that he was high off chronic, so he didn't think nothing was going to happen to him. This man would be revealed to be the man I mentioned earlier named JD, and another guy behind the security desk, which was Spunk. Pac pressed the intercom and they would be buzzed in. A man named David Rosner was the one who buzzed Pac in, who was a manager at Quad Studios. As Pac and his entourage entered the building, JD and Dexter Isaac, who was somewhere outside, would follow them in. When Tupac entered the building, he was wondering why the guy outside, JD, and the guy behind the desk, Spunk, weren't showing him any love. Pac assumed that this was Biggie's security, since Lil Cease and the rest of Junior Mafia were here, so that was a fair assumption. Tupac, Stretch, his brother-in-law Zayd, and his manager, Freddie Moore, were now trapped at a dead end waiting for the elevator, when all of a sudden, Spunk and JD came around the corner, pulling out pistols on them, yelling, "Don't nobody move, everybody on the floor. You know what time it is, run your give up the jewelry and get on the floor." To Pac's surprise, his entire entourage but himself got on the floor following the gunman's orders. Tupac was shocked that even Stretch, a guy he viewed as tough and would always protect him, was following the commands. Tupac was not complying with any commands. He assumed Stretch would fight them since he was the tallest one there. Pac froze up as the gunmen were strictly focused on him, almost ignoring his entire entourage, so he was clearly the main target here. The gunmen then would start searching Pac against the wall to see if he was strapped. They told him to take off his jewelry, but Pac refused and started cursing at them. This would piss off the gunmen, causing them to fire a shot at Tupac in the groin area. Now, Pac has told two different versions of this story. One story is the one I just told. The second version he told was that he had two twin Glocks on him, and when he went to reach for them, that's when they shot him. Tupac was shot twice in the groin, once in the hand, and twice in the head. Both bullets did not pierce through his skull. According to Stretch, Tupac shot himself with his own gun when the gunman tried grabbing it off his waistband. Dexter Isaac would later reveal that Stretch allegedly set Pac up. That's how they always knew his every move when they were on the way to the studio and went to prepare. Stretch set the whole thing up. He was in cahoots and was giving us the play-by-play. He was in communication with Jimmy Henchman, who had promised him a quarter brick of cocaine. Now this could explain why Stretch did nothing to stop the robbery and cooperated, which was very much out of character for him. Tupac was upset at Stretch for not doing anything during the robbery. This would cause a rift between Pac and Stretch. Tupac, with multiple gunshot wounds, was beaten down in the lobby, kicked multiple times, robbed of jewelry, and possibly shot once more. I dropped to the floor. Everything in my mind said, "Pac, pretend you're dead." It didn't matter. They started kicking me, hitting me. I never said, "Don't shoot." I was quiet as hell. They were snatching my shit off me while I was laying on the floor. I had my eyes closed, but I was shaking because the situation had me shaking. And then I felt something on the back of my head, something real strong. I thought they stomped me or pistol whipped me, or they were stomping my head against the concrete. I saw white, just white. I didn't hear nothing. I didn't feel nothing. And I said, "I'm unconscious," but I was conscious. And then I felt again, and I could hear things now, and I could see things, and they were bringing me back to consciousness. Then they did it again, and I couldn't hear nothing, and I couldn't see nothing. It was just all white. And then they hit me again, and I could hear things, and I could see things, and I knew I was conscious again. They also robbed Pac's manager, Freddie Moore, for his jewelry, as his entourage was at gunpoint. Lil Cease and Nino Brown of Junior Mafia would reach the ground floor after the elevator opened to greet Pac, but they were instead greeted by two guns to their faces, with the gunmen telling him to get back in the elevator. They got back in the elevator and went back up.
And when I was about to walk out, two dudes came from both sides. Get the back in the elevator. Oh, shit. Got me and Nino stepped back in, and they just holding the guns at us. And I'm hitting, I was so paranoid and nervous, I'm hitting door open. Now I'm like, the door just did, and they like this. And when the door finally started closing, they went back to them.
Tupac didn't even realize that he got shot in the head. He just had his stomach hurting from being kicked several times. They took almost all of Pac's jewelry, except the Rolex that Haitian Jack gifted him, which was worth $20,000 and one of the most valuable pieces he had. They left it on him to send a message to Pac to let him know that he was disrespecting the wrong people and not to mess with Haitian Jack. Pac's common-law brother, Zaid, then attended to Pac, who was hurt. According to Pac, he got up and went limping to the door when he saw police cars out front. They then went to the elevator to go upstairs. The police report, however, claims that Tupac went outside and yelled for the police, but Pac says he tried avoiding them. Tupac then, from the elevator, went to the 8th floor where he was supposed to record with Little Sean. When the elevator opened, they saw Puffy, Jimmy Henchman, and Andre Harrell. Zayd then allegedly put a gun to the back of Puffy's head, whose back was turned to them. Zayd then made everyone put their hands up. Now there's more stories to this because Pac said he walked upstairs and this didn't happen, but he said he saw Puffy and Jimmy Henchman, along with the Trackmasters and the Uptown Record staff. Some say Biggie was also on the 8th floor, but it's believed that Biggie actually went to the lobby after Lil Ceased informed him about Pac being shot, but was held up with the police. Tupac does recall seeing Biggie, but most likely not on the 8th floor, probably when he got to the lobby to be put in the ambulance, because Biggie was never on the 8th floor. He was recording on the 10th floor the whole time. The police and EMS would eventually make their way to the 8th floor, and the medics would attend to Pac, putting him on a stretcher, wheeling him to the ambulance. When he went down the elevator, he saw Biggie and Chico in the lobby, but Pac was just confused and didn't know what was happening. Pac started accusing everyone when he was being put in the ambulance. He would throw up the middle finger at Biggie and Chico. They didn't really take nothing of it, thinking Pac was just confused after being shot. After all, Biggie just came to the lobby with his gun to defend Tupac. Pac would be interviewed by the press while getting wheeled in the ambulance, when he would claim it was a setup, but didn't detail who set it up. He then notoriously gave the press a middle finger for taking a picture while he was on a stretcher. Tupac would then undergo surgery when he arrived at the Bellevue Hospital Center on 462 First Avenue in Manhattan. Tupac would survive the 5 gunshots that he endured that night, but now Pac was on a mission to figure out who shot him. According to Little Sean, Biggie warned Pac about Haitian Jack a week before the shooting. Pac allegedly told Haitian Jack that Biggie told him to stay away from him, which prompted Jack to send his men to rob Biggie. The robbers said, "This is what you get for telling Pac to stay away from Haitian Jack." Biggie even allegedly told Pac about the robbery, and this is when Tupac would start distancing himself from Haitian Jack. Against medical advice, Pac checked himself out of the hospital hours after surgery. The next day, on December 1st, 1994, Tupac made a surprise appearance in court to decide his fate in the Ayanna Jackson case in a wheelchair. The jurors told him that he didn't have to come to court in that condition, but Pac wanted to fight for his life. Pac would leave early and check into the Metropolitan Hospital in New York under the name Bob Day, where he would get further treatment. While in the hospital, the verdict found Pac guilty of sexual abuse. The illegal possession of a firearm charges would be dropped. Tupac would hide out at actress Jasmine Guy's apartment secretly while recovering from the shooting. Tupac's sentencing would begin in a couple of months, but Tupac unfortunately was unable to make the $3 million bond to keep himself free until his sentencing, so he would ultimately surrender to authorities in December of '94. In January of '95, he was moved to the North Infirmary Command on Rikers Island in the Bronx. On February 7th, 1995, Tupac was sentenced to 18 months to 4.5 years in prison. He would then be transferred to Clinton Correctional Facility in New York. Little did Biggie know it, but the shooting at the Quad Studios would officially mark the end of Biggie and Pac's friendship because Tupac thought Biggie knew what was going to happen to him that night. The same month that Pac got sentenced, on February 21st, 1995, Biggie dropped a single called Who Shot Ya? This song would officially spark the beef between Biggie and Tupac because Pac himself would view this as a diss track towards him. I mean, the name of the track itself seems like he's talking about Tupac, plus the timing of which Biggie dropped the track weeks after Pac's sentencing was just bad as well.
Who shot ya? Separate the weak from the ops. Leap hard to creep them Brooklyn streets.
You start telling me, oh, I can't talk to you, my attorneys. I'm like, what? You ain't who you say you are, my nigga. You ain't no gangster. No gangster's attorney can tell him not to talk to his man.
It's on, all that bickering beef. I can hear sweat trickling down your cheek. Your heartbeat sound like...
Puff can't stand Tupac. What do you think the conversation with Jimmy Henchman and Andre Harrell and Puff in that office when they know Tupac is coming up there? What do you think the conversation is? Hold that thought. I'm about to straighten this little out. He gonna stop talking reckless to me.
Sasquatch feet, thundering, shaking the concrete. Then the shit stop when I fall the.
The track was actually recorded in 1994, before Tupac even got shot, and was originally intended to appear on Mary J. Blige's album My Life, which became the K. Murray interlude. The track was cut due to it being considered too violent. According to Biggie and Puffy's former bodyguard, Gene Deal, he said that Puffy and Andre Harrell were responsible for releasing the song, while Biggie had no control over it.
Pac is shot up. You drop a song, who shot you? You don't think somebody was behind the thing? Yo, if we drop this, it's gonna get a lot of play because everybody gonna think we talking about Pac. That's what people, who didn't think they was talking about Pac? Let the dummy raise his hand first. Because they felt that it was gonna get play. They felt that it was gonna get the attention that it needed to build big up. It was the right time for you talking about money-wise, revenue, the attention it needed. It was the right time for the record label, bruh. The record label make those decisions. You know, if they could tell motherfuckers, don't talk about positive shit no more. I want to hear about gangster shit. I want to hear about killing, drugs. They can't stop a song like Who Shot You?
Puffy was a businessman, so he dropped the track and marketed it as a Tupac diss to get more attention to the record, and that's exactly what happened. It would be this misunderstanding that would start one of the most known beefs in hip-hop history. Some people are on the fence about it as well. Some believe that the track was a subliminal diss towards Tupac, and some believe that it was a coincidence, but the track was recorded before Pac got shot, so I don't think it had anything to do with Tupac. Puffy just released it without Biggie's green light and marketed it as a diss towards Tupac for more attention to the record. While locked up, Tupac would start hearing through the grapevine that Biggie's homie shot him and that Biggie was bragging about it on Who Shot Ya. Tupac also felt as if Biggie was biting him. He claims he had to redo his third album, Me Against the World, after Biggie dropped Ready to Die, because Biggie, in his eyes, copied him by talking about death on the album.
I got shot. I'm like, yo, what happened? Come see me in jail. Biggie all in the air to my Park is my homeboy wound, but not seeing me. My homeboy Stretch is going to Biggie's concert. Niggas is like abandoning me. But all in the air and on TV, they like, yeah, Pac, rest, you know, keep the struggle on. I was like, yo, I'm starting to turn into like Slick Rick. Niggas is just gonna act like I'm gonna just be in jail and they gonna give me shout outs and try to take my position. And if you watch, that's what Biggie did. Listen to us. I was there, got trained. He used to be under me like my lieutenant. The nigga, I used to come to New York. I used to do shows and let the nigga come on before I did Keep Your Head Up and Get Around. Because nobody knew the nigga in New York. And I used to tell the nigga, yo, if you want to make your money, you gotta rap for the bitches. Do not rap for the niggas. I told the nigga, don't rap for the niggas. Rap for the bitches. The bitches will buy your records and the niggas want what the bitches want. So all of a sudden he changed from being listen to party and bullshit, listen to his style. He changed from that to Big Papa.
I was a terror since the public school era. Bathroom passes, cutting classes, squeezing asses. Smoking was a daily routine.
Throw your hands in the air if you's a true player.
I love it when you call me Big Papa.
Because of me. He had my album, Me Against the World was the second one. He had the first one. I changed everything because Ready to Die came out and it sounded like my album. All my album was about, you know, dealing with death. And then he came out Ready to Die and I had to switch it.
Wow.
That's why it was less East Coast rap, East Coast beats, because Biggie had just took my shit.
That's what, but you could listen to it. That's what that was a success too, because he took like West Coast sound.
We flipped it. I told him that. I told him that. I trained. He was supposed to be Thug Life. All while he was coming up, I used to let him come on stage with me. He was screaming Thug Life.
Hey, cause I
he was like, I hate Brooklyn. I hate New York. I'm out with them niggas, Puffy cheating me. Woo woo woo. All of a sudden he blew up, and he wasn't saying Thug Life. So I started getting mad, and I was seeing niggas plays. He was hugging me, yo, Pac, yo, thank you, the only nigga that woo woo. But he told me like about a week before I got shot, he knew the nigga that was shot me, and he was like, Pac, don't hang around this nigga, you know what I mean? You know, we walked in with the nigga that shot me, that ended up shooting me. He's like, Pac, don't fuck with this, because I knew the too. He was my co-defendant. And I was like, what you mean? He's like, I'll talk to you about it later. And we didn't talk. The next time I saw him was at the studio where I got shot. So I knew he knew what happened. So I was like, Biggie, what happened? He kept sending me messages like a, you know, like I'm gonna come see you. No, what happened? While I'm in jail, strangers is telling me, yo, you don't know? Biggie homeboy shot you. Cause they bragging, they telling they niggas in jail, yo, we just got popped, woo, woo, woo. And my cousin was in jail in New York, cause I got family out there. He's sitting right there while the niggas get in the car going, yo, my homeboys just jacked that nigga Tupac. So that's how I knew who shot me, what happened, and everything.
While behind bars, on March 14th, 1995, Interscope released Tupac's third studio album, Me Against the World, which would have his best first week ever, debuting at number 1 on the Billboard 200 and selling 240,000 copies in the first week, more than double what his last album sold in the first week, becoming the first artist to have a number 1 album while incarcerated. Pac was on the verge of a major blow-up. In April of 1995, Pac graced the cover of Vibe magazine where he would do an interview from prison. During the interview, he detailed the shooting and would claim that Big Stretch turned his back on him for not defending him during the ambush. I'm thinking Stretch is gonna fight. He was towering over those dudes. From what I know about the criminal element, if dudes come to rob you, they always hit the big dude first, but they didn't touch Stretch. They came straight to me. Everybody dropped to the floor like potatoes, but I just froze up. It wasn't like I was being brave or nothing. I just could not get on the floor. They started grabbing at me to see if I was strapped. They said, take off your jewels, and I wouldn't take them off. The light-skinned dude, the one that was standing outside, was on me. Stretch was on the floor, and the dude with the newspaper was holding the gun on him. He was telling the light-skinned dude, shoot that motherfucker. Fuck it. Then I got scared, because the dude had the gun to my stomach. All I could think about was bags and shit bags. I drew my arm around him to move the gun to my side. He shot and the gun twisted, and that's when I got hit the first time. I felt it in my leg. I didn't know I got shot in my balls. Meanwhile, in '95, while Pac was behind bars, Biggie completely took over the rap game. His album, Ready to Die, was already over 3 times platinum by the beginning of 1995. Like I said earlier, it was a slow burner. Biggie would grace the cover of the July 1995 Source magazine, where he would officially be named as the King of New York. That same month, on July 20th, 1995, Lil Sean dropped his track Dom Perignon, which featured a Biggie Smalls sample on the hook. In the music video, you could see Biggie with people that are wearing shirts that read Henchman, which is Jimmy Henchman's label. So this confirmed that Biggie was still cool with Jimmy, the man that is responsible for the shooting at Quad Studios. This would also lead Pac to believe further that Biggie either had something to do with the shooting or knew about it, and felt that Biggie betrayed him. Henchman did business with Biggie and was invited to numerous bad boy parties. Meanwhile, Tupac's manager, Freddie Moore, and his goons were on the hunt for Pac shooters. Tupac had some real street cats in his corner, so this was now war between Henchman and the bad boy camp and Tupac's camp. But this beef was about to get real ugly, being the main ignition for the East and West Coast rivalry. The East Coast versus West Coast beef has been brewing for quite some time now. Tim Dog made entire tracks dissing the West Coast. There was always a competitive rivalry of which side is better. The Tupac and Biggie beef would be sort of the match on the puddle of gasoline to this East Coast and West Coast feud. Even though Tupac was born in New York, he represented the West Coast, and of course, Biggie represented the East. And now, of course, the boogeyman of hip-hop, Suge Knight, was all in on escalating this coastal beef. Suge was head honcho of the biggest hip-hop label in the world at the time, Death Row Records. Death Row and Puffy's Bad Boy Records were both gunning for that number 1 spot. Suge wanted to essentially monopolize hip-hop by signing all of the talent with plans on becoming the biggest label, not just in hip-hop but in the world. He wanted to steal Puffy's artists from him, so Puffy felt some type of way about this. One man that would be in the middle of Suge and Puffy's feud was a man named Dwayne Keefe D. Davis. Keefe D and Suge Knight grew up with each other in Compton. Keefe D was affiliated with the Southside Compton Crips growing up, while Suge never really gangbanged growing up, but was surrounded by Bloods in his neighborhood. Suge and Keefe D even played football together when they were younger, and Keefe D would go to Suge's house for barbecues after football games. Suge was focused on becoming an athlete, while Keefe D was focused on the drug game, to which by the early 90s, he was rich from moving massive amounts of drugs. Puffy and Keefe D first met in 1991 through Harlem legend Eric Von Zip, who holds the distinction of being one of the most successful hustlers in the history of New York City. Von Zip knew Puffy through his father, so they already had a relationship. Keefe D knew Von Zip through hustling in the drug game, as Keefe D would supply him with various drugs from California to New York, and the two were business partners. Tupac and Puffy actually had a great relationship, as well as being really close. They went to parties together and always looked out for each other. Suge and Puffy actually started off as friends. This was during the time when Death Row was a powerhouse in the game. Keefe D and Tupac knew each other because, as I stated earlier, him and Puffy would go to parties together while Keefe D was present at some of those parties, so Pac and Keefe D would see each other. This is when Bad Boy Records were trying to get off the ground, but Suge would offer Puffy free protection when Puffy and his artist came out to the West. After Biggie's explosion in late 94 with his debut studio album, Ready to Die, Biggie would take over the game, as I stated earlier, selling millions of records with multiple hits, doing shows all over the globe, and was now named the King of New York. Bad Boy Records seemingly came up and was now a competitor to Death Row, but Suge initially took a liking to Biggie. Suge even wanted Biggie to perform at his shows that he had booked, but Puffy wanted to charge Suge a fee, even though Suge gave Puffy free protection for a couple of years now and looked out for him, doing everything for Puffy for free. So now he wanted to charge Suge for just a performance. This angered Suge, now feeling as if Puffy owes him something for the favors that he did for him. What also didn't help was Suge's jealousy over Bad Boy in 1995, when Biggie was clearly the biggest and best rapper in the world. By this time, Death Row was falling off and had not dropped a classic since Snoop Dogg's Doggy Style in 1993, which was 2 years ago at this point in time. Suge had no artist to compete with Biggie. Big was ahead of all of Suge's artists lyrically and was selling the most records. As I stated earlier, the East Coast versus West Coast rivalry had been a thing for quite some time now, and it was not sitting well with Suge and other West Coast cats that Biggie, a guy who represents the enemy coast, is on top of the world, when the West had been running the game sales-wise since NWA blew up. Suge was notoriously known as a bully in the game, getting what he wanted no matter the consequences. He bullied everyone from music executives to artists like Vanilla Ice. He wanted to be one step ahead and went to extreme lengths to be the #1 label. He wanted all the artists for himself, so now he had his sights set on Biggie. Suge would plan on forming an expansion of Death Row called Death Row East to wipe Diddy and Bad Boy off the map and take all the East Coast artists. Suge felt like he needed a special artist to compete with Biggie who can keep up with Biggie and outsell him. Dre and Snoop couldn't compete with Biggie lyrically, plus Dre was getting fed up with Death Row at this point. Snoop wasn't even working with Dre for his second album, The Dogfather. He was working with the Dog Pound, with Daz Dillinger handling a lot of the production. The artist that Suge was looking for was sitting in the Clinton Correctional Facility in New York, and that man was Tupac. In August of 1995 is when Suge Knight would officially declare war on Bad Boy Records and the East Coast. That month, Suge Knight was in New York, where he was set to attend the 95 Source Awards, which was being held in New York City. Suge went and visited Tupac at the Clinton Correctional Facility, and Suge would realize that Tupac was the artist he was looking for to compete with Biggie and the East Coast. On August 3rd, 1995, the second annual Source Awards was being held at the Paramount Theater in New York. This is when the East and West rivalry would be escalated to a whole new level. Bad Boy representing the East Coast and Death Row representing the West. Suge got on stage to escalate things further when he would diss Diddy, inviting all the East Coast artists to come join Death Row if they don't want the executive dancing in their videos and doing ad-libs. A clear shot at Puffy, and Suge said this while staring at Puffy dead in the eyes.
Any artists out there want to be an artist and want to stay a star and don't want to have to worry about the executive producer trying to be all in the videos, all on the record, dancing, come to Death Row.
Suge's intentions were to steal all of Puffy's talent. This way Puffy would go out of business and Death Row would be the #1 label. Now before this diss, Suge would shout out Tupac, which was the first hint that he was planning on bringing Pac on board to Death Row to destroy Bad Boy Records and claim the #1 spot back.
Like to tell Tupac to keep his guards up, we ride with him.
Puffy was in complete shock that Suge said that. He couldn't believe it.
I really couldn't believe it because homeboy, me and him were friends.
Wow.
In
Who's Suge and you?
Yeah. He would pick me up from the airport.
Wow.
You know,
I've never heard this before.
Yeah. I mean, you know, we got to break some news here. He picked me up from the airport, the whole entire thing, and so it kind of had me taken back because I spoke to them as they were there. I really had thought we were cool. You know what I'm saying? Right. Cool acquaintances. You know what I'm saying? Just being respectful from people coming into other cities and stuff. Right. And so when he had said, I was like, whoa, I definitely feel where that's coming from. I know that it. I'm not, what? Yeah. Are they crazy? I was like, wow, and I was like, I could blow this thing up right now,
Very true.
I decided, I just felt it was really dangerous, you know what I'm saying, in a way, because the crowd was really with me
Benzino
and with
was
Bad
on
Boy.
Here and said they could have did that.
Yeah, they were just looking for the word or the, like, throw something up and it's just crazy. And so then, we went to the tunnel, you know what I'm saying? And homeboy was in the tunnel, and we go and have a conversation. This is time where we run the tunnel, you know what I'm saying? The whole bar is mine. Let's not get it twisted, you know what I'm saying? I'm ordering garbage buckets of champagne. People are ordering like little things, garbage buckets. Started, the bar is where I would just stand and walk around. My feet wouldn't touch the floor. For Puff. This is where the after party's at, of course, at the world famous tunnel. Right. And so then when I ran up and I asked him, and he said, I was talking about Jermaine Dupri. And I was just like, wow. Yeah, I was just like,
wait, hold on, what?
Yeah, I was just like,
I never heard this, Puff.
I was just like,
you giving us too much. You trying.
Puffy would respond on stage later that night, saying that he knows that Suge was talking about him, and goes to say that he's proud of what the artists of Death Row Records have accomplished.
I'm the executive producer that a comment was made about a little bit earlier. But check this out. Contrary to what other people may feel, I would like to say that I'm very proud of Dr. Dre, of Death Row, and Suge Knight for their accomplishments. And all this East and West that needs to stop.
Tensions were so bad that the New York crowd were even booing at Snoop Dogg.
The East Coast don't love Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg. The East Coast ain't got no love for Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg and Death Row. Y'all don't love us. Y'all don't love us. Well, let it be known then. We know y'all East Coast. We know we at East Coast and Alpha.
This is when the East versus West beef would be ignited. Now on the forefront, it was Bad Boy versus Death Row. According to Puffy himself, he saw Suge at the after party, who claimed he was not talking about Puffy with those comments, but rather was directing them at Jermaine Dupri. Puffy, on the other hand, panicked, because now it was way too dangerous to go out to the West, but he knew that he could not stay out of the West Coast, being that it's a huge market for his artists, so he needed new protection. Suge was always surrounded by hundreds of Mob Piru goons, so Puffy would need security, but he knew that hiring security would be insanely expensive. Suge's goons would outnumber them, so he would have to hire hundreds of bodyguards, which at that point He wouldn't even break even if they went out there to do a show. Puffy would have to take Suge's formula and get close with gangs in LA to get cheaper protection. Suge was cool with the Bloods, being affiliated with the Mob Piru, so Puffy thought he ought to get the Crips backing him since the Crips were much larger in numbers in Compton at the time. Puffy would then call an old friend, a man I mentioned earlier, New York gangster Von Zip. Von Zip was in the car with Keefe D, who was a highly respected member of the Southside Compton Crips.
Hey, what up, Puff? Yo, where's your boy Keefe? I need to talk to him. He's right here. Puffy want to talk to you. What's up, dog? Man, we're about to do the BET tour. Do you think it's alright for us to come out there? Why wouldn't it be? Your boy, Big CEO. He's tripping.
From there, Puffy gained the protection of the Crips in Compton when he was out in the West Coast to combat Suge and his goons. Puffy and Keefe D would form a good friendship following this. On August 15th, 1995, Biggie and the rest of Bad Boy were performing at 92.3 The Beat Summer Jam in Irvine, California. Von Zip invited Keefe D, who brought about 30 goons with him in protection of Bad Boy. Suge Knight got word that Biggie and Bad Boy were in California, so Suge pulled up to the show. Suge then saw Keefe D and wanted to holler at him, so the two talked, where Suge would ask Keefe D how he knows the Bad Boy camp, to which Keefe D would say that he knows them the same way that he knows Suge Knight. But Suge was too smart. He played chess, and he had already figured out what Puffy was doing. It was clear to Suge that Puffy was recruiting the Crips to back him on the West the same way Suge recruited the Piru to back him. Suge was tight. Not only was Bad Boy taking over the rap game, but now they had the Crips backing them. So Suge knew that this could potentially start a gang war between the Southside Compton Crips and the Mob Piru. Keefe D and Suge were childhood friends, like I mentioned earlier, so the two would maintain peace with each other. The next month, on September 24th, 1995, Jermaine Dupri was celebrating his birthday at the Platinum House nightclub in Atlanta. Both Suge Knight and Puffy were invited to the party, so they both attended. Suge was, of course, not going to miss the opportunity to bully Puffy. Suge confronted him, and the two got into a heated argument, ultimately leading to Suge Knight allegedly slapping Puffy and then putting him in a full Nelson. At the after party, they would meet again, where Suge had his homie Big Jake with him, who was a member of the Campanella Park Piru. Puffy and his crew were inside when Suge and Big Jake arrived. Both men weren't strapped. Puffy was then informed that Suge had arrived, so Puffy and his crew went outside to talk to him. It was a normal conversation at first, but Suge was there to, of course, cause trouble, so a shouting match erupted in the parking lot. Suge's homie, Big Jake, would end up getting shot and killed during this argument, allegedly by one of Puffy's bodyguards named Anthony Jones, aka Wolf. Puffy's former bodyguard, Gene Deal, says that Wolf was not the one who killed Big Jake and claims it was one of Puffy's friends from Brooklyn named Jason. Big Jake's death was seen as Puffy's fault in the eyes of Suge and the rest of Death Row. If you thought things couldn't get any worse for Puffy, then you're wrong, because the man that Suge recruited to destroy Bad Boy was about to be free. On October 12th, 1995, Suge Knight once again visited Tupac in prison. This time he posted a $1.4 million bond, releasing Tupac from Clinton Correctional Facility after serving 8 months in prison. Tupac would sign to Death Row Records on a 3-album deal with the label while his appeal was pending. Tupac and Suge Knight would form an unbreakable bond, almost like brothers, because as I mentioned earlier, no label was willing to give Pac a chance. They always viewed him as unmarketable and bad for their image. Tupac fit Death Row like a glove, maybe too good, because him and Suge together were a bad combination. Two guys who are willing to crash out at any moment. Tupac viewed Suge as the only one who gave him a chance. Everyone else let him rot in jail, but Suge was the one who came and took a chance with him. Tupac would immediately be appointed as the one who would destroy Bad Boy and the East Coast hip-hop scene in general. He came out of prison like a caged animal who was ready to take on everyone, having a lot to get off his chest. The Quad Studio shooting and everything else that he was hearing inside the joint were still fresh in Pac's mind. He was more angry than ever at the world, so now he would finally have his chance to get back at everyone. Tupac would now find a new family in LA with Death Row and was more ready than ever to get back on the scene. Tupac would align himself with gang members, mostly Suge's Mob Piru goons, and it was now all-out war on Biggie, Bad Boy, Jimmy Henchman, and everyone else he felt betrayed him and set him up to get shot that night at the Quad Studio in New York.
They know in their heart. That's why they get held now. They can't sleep. That's why they telling all the reporters and all the people, why they doing this? Because they ain't have. They can't make money, they can't go anywhere, they can't look at themselves, because they know the prodigal son has returned. I'm alive. The ghost is walking around. You know what I mean? And I'm alive talking. Everybody that thinks that I disrespected or I love my East Coast fans. I'm from there. I'm eating New York pizza. I drive New York Jeeps. Want to hear New York. But I'm saying, let's keep it real for a second. If you have the love of music that you are, study. Go back and study. Study why I would be mad. Study why I would be mad when half of New York, half of the major New York rappers, or they managers, or they agents, or they somebody was there when I got shot, and nobody couldn't give me no information. Just study that. That's all I ask for. If you're gonna act like you a gangster or a G or the king of New York, I'm gonna expect that. And when you don't come through, then I'm gonna want to crush your empire. And that's what it's time for. Why is it suddenly a nigga tripping when I do it? Why everybody else could have a war, have beef within the music, talk about differences, and it's okay, it's music, it's hip hop, it's groundbreaking. When I do it, it's war.
They got that portrayal of being, first they tough, then something happened to them, they turn to God. Then when everything's cool, they tough again. I don't understand it. It gets real confusing to me.
Just a week after his release, on October 18th, 1995, Faith Evans, who was Biggie's wife at the time, would come to LA. Tupac and Faith Evans would run into each other at the Hollywood Athletic Club off of Sunset Boulevard. From there, the two allegedly went back to Pac's hotel room where Tupac would allegedly sleep with Biggie's wife, Faith Evans. The next day, the two would go to the studio. Faith Evans was originally supposed to perform the chorus on the track Wonder Why They Call You a Bitch off of Pac's upcoming album All Eyes on Me. People say that they saw Faith Evans sitting on Pac's lap at the studio. The two would be seen again on November 14th, 1995, at the release party in LA for the Waiting to Exhale soundtrack release party. Faith Evans went on to deny she ever hooked up with Pac and claimed that at that after party, Pac allegedly pressured her into giving him oral in order to get paid for the song Wonder Why They Call You a Bitch. Tupac's camp would later deny Faith Evans' claim. Tupac allegedly slept with Faith Evans as a get-back to Biggie to humiliate him in front of the world because Pac was against Biggie, Bad Boy, and their entire camp for allegedly setting him up that night, nearly killing him with 5 shots. Pac even suggested that Suge should hook up with Puffy's baby mama, Misa Hilton, who Puffy had his first son Justin with, to add more disrespect, so that's exactly what Suge did. In October 95, he would begin hooking up with Puffy's baby mama, and they dated for around a month. But Suge would often fly her and her son to LA to get in Puffy's head. Here's a picture of Suge Knight with Puffy's child, Justin, and Misa Hilton. I mean, it doesn't get any more disrespectful than hanging out with your enemy's baby mama and their child. This was very over the top, but that is an ongoing theme here with Pac and Suge. 2 loose cannons with hot heads. It was a dangerous combination. Around this time, Tupac began working on his next album, All Eyes on Me, which was set to be a double album. On December 3rd, 1995, Tupac dropped his comeback single called California Love, featuring Dr. Dre. This track was originally intended to be Dr. Dre's comeback single for his next album, The Chronic 2, A New World Order, Papa's Got a Brand New Funk, but that project was scrapped entirely. Suge Knight convinced Dre to give Pac this song because he knew it was the hit that Pac needed to come back with. Dre agreed, but ended up giving Pac the remix version and keeping the original version for himself. This would go on to be Tupac's most successful song to date, reaching #1 on the Billboard Hot 100, staying there for 2 weeks. And Suge's plan to get Death Row back on top was absolute magic at work. A line on this track would catch the attention of Keefe D and the Southsiders, who were backing Bad Boy at the time, when Pac said this.
Famous because we throw grants. Worldwide, let them recognize from Long Beach to Rosecrans.
The street Pac is referring to, Rosecrans and Long Beach Boulevard, is territory of the Mob Piru Suge was affiliated with. This line ended up pissing off several Southside Crip members. According to Keefe D, in his book Compton Street Legend, Keefe D and some Southside Crip members ended up running into Tupac at the House of Blues on Sunset Boulevard. Tupac was with Big Syke from the Outlaws, and one of the members of the Southside Crips named Oldie allegedly grabbed Pac by his collar and pushed him against the wall and said, "You know what that Long Beach and Rosecrans stands for? That's the wrong side, motherfucker." Big Syke, being a well-respected member of the Imperial Village Crips from Inglewood, would talk to Oldie and they let Pac go. In early November of '95, Mark Anthony Bell, who was a promoter, A&R on the East Coast, and a friend of Puffy's since high school, who had done work with Death Row, him and a friend of his who was a photographer went to the Death Row offices. There, Mark Bell was handed a piece of paper by a Death Row employee that was a note asking him to reveal any inside information he had about Puffy, his family, and his LA address. Suge wanted to know where Puffy's home was on the West Coast so he and his goons could come pay him a visit. He was instructed to write it on the note and drop it to the floor and say nothing, to which Bell would refuse to do it. On December 15th, 1995, Death Row was having a Christmas party called Holiday Bash at a house in Hollywood Hills. Mark Bell and his friend attended the party, arriving around 10:30 p.m. Tupac was there with his mother, but Suge wouldn't show up until around 2 a.m. Suge saw Mark, so he would have a talk with him and confronted him for not cooperating with his instructions to reveal Puffy's personal information. Bell insisted that he knew nothing about Puffy or where he stays at when he's in LA. Suge would then tell Mark Bell that they can finish their conversation upstairs in the VIP room. Mark made the mistake and followed Suge to the VIP room, not knowing that he was going into a shark's tank. Mark Bell had no idea that Puffy and Suge were in the middle of a deadly war, so this was a recipe for disaster. Suge made everyone step out of the VIP room, except Mark Bell, himself, Tupac, Dr. Dre, and other Mob Piru goons. Suge would then pull a chair out and sit in front of Mark Bell and question him, asking if he knows where Puffy's mom lives and how he can get to his office. Tupac was whispering more questions to ask him in Suge's ear. Suge's goons would then begin yelling, "This is for a homie that died," meaning Big Jake, which Death Row saw as Puffy's fault. Mark Bell was then punched in the face by more goons and hit with bottles, with Suge demanding that he bring Puffy to him. Tupac was yelling at Bell, claiming that he was lying about not knowing Puffy's whereabouts, and then Suge's goons threatened to kill Bell. Suge would then do the unthinkable. He left the room, went to the bathroom, and urinated in a shot glass. He returned with the glass of urine and handed it to Mark Bell. One of Suge's goons hit him in the face, making him drop the urine, to which Bell tried making a run for the balcony, but was grabbed by everyone with Tupac punching him in the neck. Bell's friend, who was the photographer, would see Bell, so Suge went downstairs, pretending like he was fixing up and straightening the Christmas tree. Bell's friend got in his car and would inform the police that his friend was in danger at the party. In the VIP room, Mark Bell was being beaten down by Suge's goons and Tupac kicking him in the body and punching him. He was even put in a chokehold for a couple of minutes. They stole his wallet and jewelry while he was in the chokehold, losing $30,000 worth of his belongings. Suge would then come back and act like nothing happened, offering Mark Bell a position at death row. Eventually, the cops arrived. Suge and his goons let Bell go, to which he would eventually leave in a taxi cab. Mark Bell eventually flew back home to New York, where word would get back to Puffy that Suge was going to extreme lengths to try and find out where he lives. Puffy was even more afraid now because Suge was willing to do all of this. The next day, on December 16th, 1995, Snoop Dogg and the Dogg Pound were in New York shooting the music video for the track New York, New York off the Dogg Pound's debut studio album, Dog Food, which dropped in October of that year. Snoop Dogg and the Dogg Pound wanted to do an interview with Funkmaster Flex, saying that all of the New York rappers should come hang out. He revealed that DPG is here shooting a music video in Times Square and Red Hook, Brooklyn. Funkmaster Flex ultimately did not let them in. Biggie would call in Hot 97 to speak with Funkmaster Flex, where he would reveal live on the air that the Dogg Pound were shooting a music video in Red Hook, Brooklyn, saying how dare they come to New York and shoot a video dissing us. The video that the Dogg Pound were shooting actually was not a diss towards New York, but rather Snoop and DPG paying homage and showing love. Biggie calling in and saying this would lead to Snoop and the Dogg Pound getting shot at later that day while they were in their trailer on the set for their video. Luckily, none of them got hit with any bullets. Some say this was done as Biggie's way of getting back at Pac. Former Death Row head of security Reggie Wright would claim that Biggie did this because he was pissed that Snoop and DPG allegedly took his beat for his commercial for St. Ida's to use on their track New York, New York. This would lead to the Dogg Pound and Snoop to change the music video featuring Snoop Dogg kicking down buildings as a diss towards New York for the shooting. After this, Tupac would become more enraged with Biggie. The next year, on January 4th, 1996, in an article with the New York Times Magazine, Tupac and Suge would allude to Pac sleeping with Biggie's wife, Faith Evans. Tupac is the only one in a different color. He's wearing an elaborately patterned gold shirt and baggy jeans. The wife of a top rapper bought this for him, Suge says. Who's that? Tupac smiles. His name is an acronym. Notorious B.I.G.'s wife, Faith Evans. She bought him this and a suit and some other stuff, Suge says. And how do you thank her, Tupac? Tupac pauses. I did enough. Biggie apparently was enraged after reading this, as you can imagine, so he aggressively confronted her. After Biggie saw the photos of her and Pac together, with Faith Evans putting up her hand, showing that she has no wedding ring on, Biggie crashed out and started choking her, but to the media, he just brushed it off as a joke, showing that Tupac can't get under his skin, because clearly this was Suge and Pac's plan. In early '96, Biggie recorded a track with Busta Rhymes called The Ugliest. It's heavily speculated that Biggie's verse was subliminally about Tupac.
And the winner is not that thinner kid, bandanas, tattoos, my fists never bruised.
Busta Rhymes left the track off his album, not wanting to get involved in the beef, but eventually it leaked. On February 13th, 1996, Tupac dropped his comeback double album, All Eyes on Me. This would be Pac's most successful album, selling 566,000 copies in the first week, charting at number 1 on the Billboard 200. Tupac seemingly took the throne from Biggie as the number 1 rap artist in the world, and Death Row was now back on top. A month later, on March 29th, 1996, the '96 Soul Train Music Awards was being held at the Shrine Auditorium in LA. Biggie and Puffy were set to be there, as well as Tupac and Suge Knight. Suge saw this as his opportunity to get back at them for the shooting that occurred with Snoop and the Dog Pound back in December. Suge wanted to make sure that Biggie and Puff would get touched when they come back to LA, since Biggie was calling shots on his people. Suge bought out around 60 tickets just for his goons. Keefy D, on the other hand, was in attendance that night, but would not accompany Puffy due to the rules not allowing him to leave or enter through the back door. Bad Boy would open up the show, which also angered the Death Row camp, being that they wanted to open up. Puffy wanted to get the awards and get the hell up out of there before anything could pop off, so after they got their awards, they tried dipping out the back door, but were held up by security. The security had been bribed by Death Row head of security, Reggie Wright, so as Bad Boy was held, the Death Row camp drove around back to confront them. Tupac, Suge, and a bunch of goons pulled up to the back door where Biggie was coming out of. Reggie Wright had connections with the security at the venue and the LAPD. That's how crooked Death Row really was. As Biggie left the building, Pac hopped out of a Hummer and began yelling at Biggie, calling him a fat motherfucker and a traitor. Pac wanted to get it over with right there, so C. Gutta, a member of Biggie's entourage who was a respected gangster, pulled his gun out. Pac would begin yelling for Reggie Wright to shoot C. Gutta. Biggie stood there fearless like a man, not afraid of anyone in front of him, but according to Reggie Wright, Puffy got up out of there, running down the street and allegedly hiding under a car. Eventually, the confrontation would be split up by the Fruit of Islam, who got in between them. Luckily, nobody was hurt that day. Both camps went their separate ways, but Biggie would be mad at Puffy for running off and leaving him. According to Gene Deal, Puffy went back to his LA house when he overheard a conversation that Gene Deal had with Chaz Slim Williams about running away at the Soul Train Awards. Puffy got pissed, claiming that he can't be involved in gunplay because he will lose business. Then he said something really crazy.
He said, I'm a businessman. I'm about making money. But something gotta change. I don't give a if Pac gotta die, Big gotta die, or Suge Knight go to jail. And then my man looked at me and Bun was like, yo, that said Big. I said, yo, he sure did. He said, yeah. He said, Big gotta die? He said, yo, he said Big.
The next month, on April 28th, 1996, the music video for Tupac and Snoop Dogg's track, Two of America's Most Wanted, was released. In the video, a Biggie and Puffy lookalike can be seen. The opening scene, Tupac speaks to Biggie, questioning him about the Quad Studio shooting while referencing the movie Scarface. Tupac then orders Big Syke to shoot them before leaving the office.
It's a lying piece.
Pop, please don't kill me. It was Buff's idea. Oh, man. I'm just a rapper, man.
According to Vibe magazine, not long after the Soul Train incident, it appeared as if Death Row might be starting to chill. At a mid-May East-West rap summit in Philadelphia, set up by Dr. Ben Chavis to help defuse the situation, Suge avoided any negative comments about Puffy, who did not attend because he says there was too much hype around the event. There's nothing between Death Row and Bad Boy or me and Puffy, said Suge Knight. Death Row sells volume, so how could Puffy be a threat to me, or Bad Boy be a threat to Death Row? The next month, in June of 1996, is when Tupac would take this Biggie, Bad Boy, and East Coast beef to wax in a crazy way. Back in October of 1995, Tupac had recorded a full-blown diss track on Biggie, Puffy, Junior Mafia, and the rest of Bad Boy called Hit 'Em Up. This version would end up being scrapped and changed entirely, but the original version still ended up leaking.
Heard they call you Big Papa, nigga, you figure. Cause to me, you always be a phony fat nigga. I can't be copied, even wearing my socks. You wanna rough.
April of 96, Tupac decided to do his verse over with changes to the features as well, and on June 4th, 1996, Tupac released the final version of his diss track, Hit 'Em Up. On this official version of the changed verse, not only does he go at Biggie and Puffy, but also disses Lil Cease and Lil Kim. Tupac got really disrespectful on this track, bragging about sleeping with Biggie's wife, Faith Evans.
But I your wife. We bust on bad boys, niggas for life. Biggie Smalls and Junior Mafia, some mark ass bitches.
At the end of the track, Tupac went on a crazy rant, just crashing out on Biggie, Bad Boy, and the entire East Coast, when he also called out Mobb Deep.
Biggie, Bad Boy as a staff, record label, and as a motherfucking crew.
This would go down as one of the greatest and most iconic diss tracks and hip-hop songs of all time, and a huge blow to Biggie and Bad Boy. Biggie and Puffy would end up revealing their reaction to Hit 'Em Up in their September 1996 Vibe magazine interview. Puffy said, quote, "Why would I set a dude up to get shot? If I'ma set a dude up, which I would never do, I ain't gonna be in the country. I'ma be in Bolivia somewhere. He ain't mad at the dudes that shot him. He knows where they're at. He knows who shot him. If you ask him, he knows, and everybody in the street knows, and he's not stepping to them because he knows that he's not gonna get away with that shit. To me, that's some real sucker shit. Be mad at everybody, man. Don't be using dudes as scapegoats. We know that he's a nice guy from New York. All shit aside, Tupac is a nice, good-hearted guy. I hope that his thug life shit is really over. But on the real, if you're gonna be a motherfucking thug, you gots to live and die like a thug. You know what I'm saying? There ain't no jumping in and out of thugism. If that's what you choose to do, you gots to go out like that. I ain't no thug. Only thugs I know is dead or in jail or about to be." Biggie then said, quote, "I'm still thinking this dude's my man. This shit's just got to be talk. That's all I kept saying to myself. I can't believe he would think that I would shit on him like that. He got the streets riled up because he got a little song dissing me, but how would I look dissing him back? My dudes is like, f that guy. That dude's so much on your dick. It don't even make no sense to say anything." Now there was one line in particular at the end of Hit 'Em Up that got Puffy real scared when Tupac would make a threat to Bad Boy and his enemy's children when he said this.
My fofo make sure all y'all kids don't grow.
That same month in June of 96, Death Row allegedly printed up a magazine ad featuring Misa Hilton and Suge holding Puffy's 2-year-old son with a caption reading, "The East Coast can't even take care of their own." This ad would be discussed on New York's Hot 97 by Wendy Williams. Death Row now denies that this ad ever existed. Puffy would freak out in panic after seeing the pictures of Suge Knight with his ex-wife and 2-year-old son, so he thought that maybe Suge had done something to them and was holding them in LA. This would completely rub Puffy the wrong way. He was completely finished after this and did not want any peace talks. Puffy would later say in an interview with Vibe where he was at with the beef at this point in time, quote, "I'm ready for it to be out of my life and be over with. I mean that from the bottom of my heart. I just hope it can end quick and in a positive way because it's gotten out of hand." According to Keefe D in his book Compton Street Legend, while Puffy, Orlando Anderson, Von Zip, and other Crips were at a deli in LA, Puffy would talk to Keefe D in private where he allegedly ordered a hit on Tupac and Suge Knight. Keefe D said that Puffy told him, quote, "I need to speak to you, big dog," and the pair went to the side to talk. Keefe D then alleges that Puffy said, quote, "I have a couple of problems I need to be handled. Big CEO and Pac. That's not a problem. We can make that happen." Puffy also allegedly offered Keefe D a $1 million payday to make it happen.
Tupac's on vinyl talking about killing all of our kids when they grow up, and he says, "I just need you to take care of them." And Keefe D's like, "That's no problem. You know, that's what we do."
Puffy wanted to end the problems with Suge and Tupac, fearing for his life, his family, and his business. Tupac was trying to destroy Bad Boy, something that Puffy built from the ground up. Suge was also making Puffy's life hell, torturing his friends at parties, hooking up with his wife, and being seen with his son. The 96 Soul Train Awards incident where Puffy had guns in his face, it was just getting out of hand. People were getting shot and even killed over this whole East versus West beef, so Puffy had to put a stop to it. On June 25th, 1996, Jay-Z dropped his debut studio album, Reasonable Doubt. The track Brooklyn's Finest features Biggie. Biggie decided to send shots at Tupac and Faith Evans for allegedly hooking up with Pac when he said this.
If Faye have twins, she probably have two pops. Time to separate the pro.
In July 1996, another confrontation occurred between the two camps. Mob Piru and Death Row affiliates K-Dub, Trayvon Lane, and Lil Mo were leaving the Foot Locker store at the Lakewood Mall in Lakewood, California, which is not far from Compton. Orlando Anderson and 7 other members of the Southside Crips were also at the Foot Locker. According to Keefe D, it was actually Trayvon Lane and the rest of the Death Row affiliates that started it when they approached Orlando, who was getting pressed by them while looking for shoes. The 7 other Crips that were with him got involved, and Orlando allegedly knocked out Trayvon Lane and tried snatching his Death Row chain. But according to the Mob Piru and everyone on Death Row, no chains were stolen that day, but the Crips say otherwise. Keefe D says the chain was taken and was worth only around $300. They did this because it was rumored that Puffy offered the Crips $25,000 as a reward for every Death Row chain that was delivered to him. The Death Row chain was a gift from Suge himself. He gave it to everyone on the team. So Puffy having people take them was a huge sign of disrespect towards Death Row. This is when Tupac and Death Row vowed to retaliate on Orlando Anderson the next time they see him. This whole rap beef was now a full-on gang war with the Mob Piru and the Southside Crips. At the height of this beef, people were killed, lives were ruined, people were assaulted, multiple shootings, attempted murders, robberies, the list goes on as to what actually happened behind the East versus West beef. Now that Puffy put a price on Suge and Pac's head, it was now life or death for Tupac, Suge, and even Biggie for that matter. During this time, Biggie was working on his second studio album, Life After Death, which was scheduled to drop in late 1996, rumored for a Halloween release on October 31st, 1996. According to Keefe D, in his book Compton Street Legend, Keefe D ran into Suge Knight, Tupac, and Snoop at the Palencia Club on Sunset Boulevard. Each Pac, Snoop, and Suge pulled up each in different colored Rolls Royces. Suge in the candy apple red one, Snoop in the white one, and Pac in the black one. Suge hollered at Keefe D, and all the Crips started clowning Keefe D for talking to Suge. Suge eventually offered that they go to Club Paradise instead, which was located on Hyatt and Santa Monica. They all rolled out when Suge's Rolls Royce would get shot up, with Keefe D even saying that he thought Suge was dead.
Some dude shot up his car.
Shot up whose car?
Suge, that Rolls Royce that night.
Okay.
Keefe D says that Suge may have felt that he and his crew had something to do with it, but according to Keefe D, they had absolutely nothing to do with that shooting. A few weeks later, Keefe D was with his homeboys at the car wash talking about going to Vegas to see the Mike Tyson versus Bruce Seldon fight at the MGM Grand Garden Arena in Vegas. Keefe D and his homies placed an order for tickets through a Rollin' 60s Crip that he did jail time with that used to scalp tickets. The owner of the car wash he was at was also a Crip who informed them that Suge was going to be present at that fight. Keefe D saw it as good intel, but he wasn't tripping because he wasn't planning on causing static that night. He just wanted to go enjoy the fight. It's highly rumored around this time that Suge Knight allegedly slept with Keefe D's wife, and another Suge affiliate, Buntree, slept with Keefe D's sister-in-law. Now this is just all speculation. In September 1996, Suge Knight graced the cover of the September 96 issue of The Source magazine, where he would sit down for an interview. During the interview, he would speak on Puffy and even challenged him to fight Tupac in a boxing match, and also called out Biggie to a boxing match against himself. Puffy be all in his artist videos, cause he wanted to be an entertainer and couldn't make it. Then he wanted to sit down with the white executives and talk about millions of dollars. You don't see Sony Music Chief Tommy Mottola shaking in Mariah Carey's videos. You don't see Arista head Clive Davis in Whitney's videos. You don't see Interscope president Jimmy Iovine all in 9 Inch Nails' shit. They just see him as a wannabe. He gives black entrepreneurs a bad name. Let's put a ring up, throw the gloves on, and fight. Puffy, get your mother ass in the ring and fight Tupac. Look at Puffy's body. Who can he whoop? How you gonna talk shit and be in a little boy's body? And I'll beat Biggie's ass all over the ring. We can do it in Vegas and give the money to the ghetto, not charity organizations, which don't mean a motherfucking thing. Take it straight to the ghetto and build swings, parks, and buy food and shit. On the night of September 7th, 1996, Suge, Tupac, and more death row affiliates, along with Keefe D, his nephew Orlando Anderson, and more, all attended the Mike Tyson versus Bruce Seldon fight. After the fight was finished, Keefe D and his homies headed to the prearranged meeting spot, which was the food court, where they were waiting for about 15 minutes. Everyone was showing up little by little, except for his nephew Orlando Anderson. That's because as Orlando was waiting, Tupac had approached him and asked if he was a member of the South Side. Then, out of nowhere, Tupac punched Orlando in the face, and his crew started jumping Orlando as he was on the floor when they were kicking and stomping him. According to Keefe D, some East Coast Crips approached them as they were waiting and told them that they saw some death row guys jump his nephew near the casino. Keefe D would later find out that that same guy whose chain was allegedly snatched in the Lakewood Mall 2 months prior was the one who informed Tupac that Orlando was standing by himself. Keefe D and his entourage rushed to find Orlando, but by that time, Pac and Suge had already left. Orlando told Keefe D that the death row guys rushed him and that the guy from the Lakewood Mall, which is rumored to be Trayvon Lane, was seen with them. Keefe D was pissed. His nephew just got jumped by Pac and the rest of his death row entourage. This gave Keefe D the green light, as Suge and Pac already had a bounty on them. Keefe D felt like they were disrespecting him, saying that he helped Suge with money to even get death row started in the first place, and now in his eyes, Suge was biting the hand that feeds him. On top of that, Suge wasn't answering any calls or paying them the money he allegedly owed them, which was strike 3 for Keefe D and his crew, so this night was about to take a complete turn for the worse. The Crips knew that Suge and Pac were heading to Club 662, which was a club in Vegas that Suge owned because there was a planned after-fight party that Suge and his crew had been talking about on the radio. A very bad move by Suge to reveal their next location, especially when they have bounties on their heads. Keefe D allegedly called for them to go to Club 662 to meet them. According to Keefe D, in his book Compton Street Legend, as they waited for the valet to bring the cars, Keefe D saw Von Zip with female rapper Foxy Brown. Zip called Keefe D over to his Benz, telling Foxy Brown to step out of the car as Keefe D stepped in. According to Keefe D, Von Zip popped out the stash box and pulled out a black .40 Glock. He turned to Keefe D and allegedly said, quote, "It's time to get the money." Zip then handed Keefe D the 17-shot pistol, which Keefe D then put on his waist as he hopped out of the car. Two of Keefe D's affiliates, T. Brown, DeAndre, and his nephew Orlando Anderson, hopped in a white Cadillac. Keefe D, along with 5 other passengers, hopped in a rented van. The passengers were C-Ray, Big Meech from BMF, Trey, Wendell Prince, and Kevin Davis. There was also a third car, but the passengers would never be revealed. They pulled into the back parking lot of Club 662. Keefe D planned on confronting Suge about jumping his nephew. Keefe D says that they had 3 cars filled with 3 to 4 people ready to, in quote, burn they ass up. They waited an hour and a half, so Keefe D got sick of waiting, so he decided to leave. Their next destination was the Carriage House, which is a hotel in Vegas that they rented a few rooms in. They stopped at the liquor barn to buy bottles of Dom Perignon Rosé and Cristal. On the way there, some of the guys in the van with Keefe D were allegedly worried that Suge would get some of his police hitmen to come back and try to kill them if they went after them. As they were getting ready to leave the liquor barn, Keefe D decided to hop in the white caddy with Orlando and company, so he jumped in the front passenger seat. Meanwhile, at around 10:55 p.m., Pac and Suge were in a black 1996 BMW 750 IL, stopped at a red light on Las Vegas Boulevard when they rolled down the window to let a guy named Leonard Jefferson take a picture of them. This picture would unfortunately be the last picture taken of Tupac ever. They pulled off down Las Vegas Boulevard, where they would be pulled over by a cop for not having any temporary plates on the vehicle, also being warned by the officer that the radio was too loud. Eventually, they found the plates in the trunk, and the officer would let them go from the traffic stop without a ticket. A couple of females then joined them in the caravan, or convoy, as they were driving down the street, to which Tupac was hollering at them to come back to the club with them. They eventually made a right turn on Flamingo Road eastbound towards the club. Meanwhile, Keefe D and company were actually on the same road, but in the westbound lanes at the light, ready to make a left turn, when they would see Tupac hanging out of the sunroof, hollering at the girls that were driving with them. Keefe D and the others spotted the convoy, so they made a U-turn at the intersection, now heading eastbound on Flamingo towards Tupac and Suge Knight. Keefe D said that if Tupac wasn't hanging out of the sunroof, they would have never seen them. After they made that U-turn, the other 2 vehicles that were with them would be separated, so now Keefe D and the Crips in the white Cadillac were heading towards Tupac and Suge. There was a long convoy, so Keefe D and everyone in the caddy were riding in the right lane, slow rolling, looking into each car until they found them. They were all stopped at a red light at the intersection of Koval Lane and Flamingo Boulevard. The white Cadillac then pulled next to Pac and Suge, and according to Keefe D, like 2 rams locking horns, Suge and himself looked each other dead in the eye, locking eyes. No words were exchanged. Tupac allegedly made an erratic move, reaching down beneath his seat, most likely to pull a weapon out. The back left window rolled down of the Cadillac, where 13 shots would be let off, with 3 bullets hitting the right rear door and 5 bullets hitting the right passenger door. Suge Knight was allegedly grazed in the head with a bullet as glass was shattering in the vehicle, but Suge ducked, which saved his life. Tupac didn't duck. He allegedly tried getting in the back seat to get out of the way, but he wasn't able to. He was shot in the chest twice, the hip, and the hands, totaling 4 shots. 4 shots went through the passenger window and 1 in the windshield. Some say it's false, that Tupac tried jumping in the back seat, and that he was actually turning to wield a strap from the stash box in the car. According to Keefe D, in his trial years later, Tupac did fire back, so he is now claiming self-defense. According to Suge, he told Pac to get down and actually grabbed him. That's when he was grazed in the head and neck with bullets. People say that Suge used Pac as a shield, which has been disproven by many accounts that night.
I got shot in the head, got grazed some other places, but I still got the bullet in my head. It's still there. But for as trying to get him to the hospital, didn't make me realize that I was shot. Because usually when you get shot in the head, the first thing the person do is panic. You know, bam, I'm shot in the head, I'm about to die. You know. And once you do that, you can't drive nowhere. My whole thing was, Pac said he was shot. I'm like, you shot? I'm finna get you to the hospital. I'm driving, telling him I'm finna get to the hospital, kick back. Pac looked at me and said, you know what? You need the doctor more than me. You the one shot in your head. And we laughed the whole time going to find out went to the hospital. That's the conversation we had. It wasn't, Pac was a man the whole time. It wasn't that he was like, oh, I'm shot. He cracking jokes. He like, yeah, they shot me. He said, but you shot in your head. Look at your head bleed. Look how much it's bleed. That was Pac. And I'm like, man, shut up, I'm gonna get you to the doctor.
The white Cadillac pulled off as Suge rushed Tupac to the University Medical Center of Southern Nevada, where he was put on life support. While in the intensive care unit 6 days later, at around 4:03 p.m., Tupac was unfortunately pronounced dead due to respiratory failure and cardiopulmonary arrest at the age of 25 years old. This is due to a bullet puncturing his lung during the shooting. Suge Knight went back to LA to call a meeting with the Mob Piru. They were seeking retaliation for the murder of Pac because Suge looked Keefy D in the eyes, so he knows who did it. A brutal, month-long gang war would break out in Compton between several Crip and Blood sets. According to Keefy D, the Bloods lost 6 people during this war, and their side lost 1 person, with hundreds being wounded. The Southsiders then targeted Suge Knight, but Suge was smart, he stayed out of town. Keefy D even said that his homies dressed up as UPS drivers knocking on the door of Suge's studio in disguise in hopes that he answers the door to harm him. Keefy D then allegedly sent word to Von Zip to tell Puffy to send them their $1 million reward that they were promised, but that never ended up happening. According to the FBI, instead of bringing the money back, Von Zip allegedly kept the money for himself and bought a nightclub with it. Meanwhile, on the day of Tupac's death, Biggie was in a recording studio in New York. Biggie was hoping that he would pull through. Quote, he always lived. It's not the first time he had got shot, but eventually news broke that Tupac had passed away. I had the TV on, and when they said Pac just died, we was like silent, couldn't believe it. Wow, Pac died. Unbelievable. Biggie then called Faith Evans. She described his voice as low and small. He was crying and seemed afraid. Something ain't right, Faye. She got f***ed up along the way. But that was my guy. Biggie then made the decision to not attend his service, but even if he wanted to, he wouldn't have been able to, because 2 days later, Biggie and Lil Cease were arrested by the NYPD for marijuana possession. The cops took their Lexus, but when they got it back, the car wouldn't drive, so the dealership gave them a Chevy Lumina. The next day, they drove to Jersey with Lil Cease driving and Biggie in the passenger seat. It was raining out, and when they were on the New Jersey Turnpike, Lil Cease lost control of the vehicle, and the car jumped a barricade with Cease's face hitting the steering wheel and shattered some of his teeth. Biggie fractured his leg in 3 places and had to be cut out of the van. Biggie would spend the next 2 months in a rehab facility. He started doing therapy and talking to God. He was trying to change his life after the death of Tupac and the car accident. This is the reason why Biggie walked with a cane and had a cane on the cover of his next album, Life After Death. No one was charged with Tupac's murder. It was a cold case that hadn't been solved yet, so speculation began of who was responsible. Puffy and Biggie were blamed for the murder, to which Biggie responded to the speculation, "It's not worth it anymore. That's why I just stay in the motherfucking house." Biggie wanted to squash the beef and make peace with the West Coast, so he recorded a track for his upcoming album, tributing and paying homage to California, a track called Going Back to Cali. On November 5th, 1996, Tupac's posthumous album, The Don Illuminati, The 7-Day Theory, under the stage name Machiavelli, was released. This album has disses towards Biggie and Bad Boy. The original back cover art features disses towards Dre, Diddy, who is depicted wearing a pink dress, and also Biggie, when he depicts Biggie as a pig with a beanie hat that says PIG on it and a bad girl shirt. The opening track, titled Bomb First, My Second Reply, was his second reply, as the title states, to Biggie and the East Coast, calling himself Bad Boy Killer and even dissing Jay-Z because of Biggie's diss towards him on their collab track Brooklyn's Finest on Jay-Z's album Reasonable Doubt.
Oh, how we do these but I'm not gonna cry. I'm a bad boy killer. Jay-Z got to.
On the track Toss It Up, on the outro, he disses Biggie and Bad Boy. On the track Against All Odds, Tupac addresses all of his enemies at the time, like Nas, Mobb Deep, Dre, and more. On the first verse, he addresses Puffy, calling him a sucker and a punk.
Let's be honest, you a punk or you would see me with gloves. Remember that you said the vibe about me being a thug?
After this, throughout late 1996 and early 1997, Biggie would do interviews speaking on the tragic passing of Tupac.
Coastal war, you know, like, I never hated nobody from the West Coast, you know what I'm saying? It was a personal beef, you know what I'm saying? And I figure like this, that man has passed away. We just need to just let that be it. I kind of recognize the power that me and Tupac had to be able to have a personal problem with each other and wage a East Coast, West Coast beef. I mean, that's a coast against a coast. Just two regular dudes, you know? So since he's gone, I think I got to take his place and my place to take all the power I can to just squash it.
In early 1997, Biggie would meet an unfortunate fate. Puffy set up a promotional tour for Biggie's upcoming album, Life After Death, which was now scheduled to drop on March 25th, 1997. In February, Biggie did what he said he was going to do on his track and went back to Cali, specifically LA. Biggie was there not only to promote his album, but also to shoot the music video for the lead single called Hypnotize, which ended up dropping on March 4th, 1997 as the first single from the album. 3 days before the track's release, on March 1st, 1997, Biggie stopped by to do an interview with Sway, and then he spit a freestyle. On this freestyle, it's heavily speculated that he was sneak dissing Tupac.
Player please, blood floods your dungarees, and that's just the half of my war path.
On March 7th, Biggie presented an award to Tony Braxton at the 1997 Soul Train Music Awards. The next morning, Biggie was scheduled to travel to London, but he decided against it and missed his flight. The next day, on the evening of March 8th, 1997, Biggie and his bad boy entourage attended a party hosted by Vibe magazine at the Peterson Automotive Museum in the Carthay Circle neighborhood in LA. Other celebrities like Faith Evans, Queen Latifah, Aaliyah, Chris Tucker, Irv Gotti, Jermaine Dupri, and many more were in attendance. It was now March 9th at 12:30 a.m. Biggie left with his entourage in two green 1997 GMC Suburbans to attend an after-party at record executive Steve Stout's house in the Hollywood Hills. Biggie was sitting in the front passenger seat with Damian D-Rock Butler, Lil Cease, and driver Gregory G. Money Young. According to Gene Deal, Puffy was acting extra erratically and wasting time trying to look at girls. Gene Deal wanted to ride on the side of the car with his gun to protect Biggie, but Puffy allegedly told him that he wouldn't work for Bad Boy ever again if he doesn't get in the car. Puffy then put his seat all the way back, which now Gene Deal had to be in the car sideways. Gene Deal then told one of the drivers named Kenny to run the next three lights. At 12:45 a.m., when they left, the SUV Biggie was in stopped at a red light on the corner of Wilshire Boulevard and South Fairfax Avenue. All of a sudden, a dark-colored Chevrolet Impala SS drove to the side of the vehicle. The driver lowered his window and drew a blue steel 9mm pistol and fired at the SUV. 4 bullets hit Biggie, where he would then be rushed to Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, where they would perform emergency surgery, but Biggie would be pronounced dead at 1:15 a.m. at 24 years old. Biggie's autopsy was released to the public in 2012. According to the report, 3 of the 4 shots weren't fatal. The 4th bullet was the fatal one, which struck his liver, colon, heart, and some of his left lung. After Biggie's passing, immediate speculation began that Biggie and Tupac's deaths are connected in some way. There's a ton of speculation surrounding Biggie's death, and if it had something to do with this whole East versus West Coast beef. Before we get into these theories, I just want it to be known that I am not accusing anyone of anything. This is all alleged speculation that I gathered through research. Everything stated is public information. Multiple investigators have allegedly pointed the blame ultimately at Suge Knight. Now, it's believed that Suge Knight allegedly was the one who ordered the hit on Biggie, but who exactly did he allegedly hire? Well, that's where it gets tricky, because there have been a couple of different people that investigators have pointed to. The first we will talk about is a man named Amir Muhammad, who is a former member of the Nation of Islam. FBI agent Phil Carson alleged that Suge Knight hired Amir Muhammad to kill Diddy, but ended up murdering Biggie instead, alleging that Suge's motives were to get back at Diddy because he allegedly put a $1 million bounty on Tupac's head, so it was sort of an eye for an eye move. Also, as a bit of vengeance for his fallen friend Big Jake, who we discussed earlier. Phil Carson told the newspaper, quote, "All the evidence points to Amir Muhammad. He's the one who pulled the trigger. There were plenty of others who helped orchestrate it and allowed him to pull the trigger. Amir Muhammad, aka Harry Billups, the godparent to LAPD officer David Mack's 2 children, has been identified by several sources as the trigger man. Quote, Mack is a registered owner of a 1995 black SS Impala with chrome wheels, the exact description given as being driven by Wallace's shooter. Carson also alleges that there is a police cover-up done by the LAPD. The corrupt officer that was accused of conspiring to commit this crime was David Mack, who allegedly had a history of being a corrupt police officer. Mack was convicted of a robbery in August 1997, stealing $722,000 from a Los Angeles Bank of America. An informant told the FBI that the money was supposed to go to Amir Muhammad. Russell Poole, another detective who was trying to solve the case, believed that Amir Muhammad was allegedly behind this killing. He was told by an informant named Michael Robinson, aka Psycho Mike, that Suge Knight allegedly conspired with David Mack to hire Amir Muhammad to kill Biggie. Psycho Mike's testimony would come out, but this is when things wouldn't add up, because Psycho Mike said that the shooter used a machine gun and was on foot, which was not correct at all. Here's what he said. They ask him if he knows where Biggie was killed, and he says no. They ask him where the party was that night, and he says, somewhere up in Los Angeles somewhere. He asks if the shooter acted alone. He doesn't know. He didn't know what Biggie was killed with. He says, quote, with a machine gun or something. When asked what caliber, he just says again, I heard machine gun. Could have been an Uzi or a Tech 9. I don't know. He claims the shooter was on foot and then ran around the corner where he jumped into a limo or a truck or something and drove off. They ask him why he thinks the shooter escaped in a limo, and if he's just saying that because he had already told them that Amir drove around in a white limo. He admits that he's just speculating based on that. He gave 3 potential names, Abraham, Ashmir, or Amir. In fact, near the beginning of this interview, he says Ashmir, and then the detective corrects him and is like, wait, didn't you say Amir before? And his reaction is like, oh yeah. The description of the alleged shooter was sketched wearing a bow tie. Gene Deal would reveal that he actually spotted a suspicious man wearing this exact attire on the night of Biggie's passing.
Hear this guy come down, He dressed in a blue suit, white shirt, blue bow tie. He stops immediately. And he just looked at me and I looked at him. He didn't say nothing.
Amir Muhammad has since been clear from the case because of Psycho Mike's false testimony not making much sense at all. In 2006, Detective Greg Caden, who was also working on solving Tupac's murder, reopened the case and alleged that Suge Knight hired a well-respected killer and Mob Piru affiliate named Wardell Faust, aka Poochie, to allegedly kill Biggie. During the time of Biggie's death, Suge Knight was locked up due to a probation violation, facing 9 years in prison. While incarcerated, Greg Caden says through Suge's then-girlfriend and baby mama, Teresa Swan, Suge allegedly had the hit on Biggie taken care of for an alleged amount of $25,000 paying Poochie. Detective Caden would also get Swan to confess that Suge allegedly did pay Poochie to murder Biggie. Once she admitted in her alleged participation, the FBI put a wire on her and had her meet with Suge in order to get him to confess, which Suge Knight did not confess anything at all. People that knew Poochie from the death row camp would say that they wouldn't be surprised if Poochie did this because he was a known shooter.
Suge's in jail, Tupac's dead, and they're just trying to, continue, with their music and their promotional stuff. Unbeknownst to them, Suge Knight is already plotting to retaliate. So he gets a girl that he can trust to act as an intermediary, as a messenger, because he's in jail. She visits him in jail. They have a discussion. He says, "This is what I want done. Reach out to this dude who I know will do it." And she does just that. She secures a payment, and the three of them conspire to shoot and kill Biggie. The night of the shooting, Wardell Faust, the hitman, shows up, lays in wait, and ultimately shoots and kills Biggie.
Then there's the theory that Diddy actually set up Biggie to get him killed to sell more records, but this case really doesn't have any concrete evidence either. Biggie's murder remains a mystery till this day. None of these cases have been proven to be true. This is all alleged, and the case remains unsolved. On March 25th, 1997, Biggie's posthumous album Life After Death was released. On this album, Biggie actually responded to Tupac a couple of different times. On the track Kick in the Door, Biggie sent subliminal shots at Tupac. On the first verse, he said that he crushes so-called willies, thugs, and rapper dons. Tupac referred to himself as Machiavelli the Don, so this could be seen as a Pac diss.
Your reign on the top was short like leprechauns as I crush so-called willies, thugs, and rapper dons.
On the track What's Beef, on the first verse, he allegedly references the Lakewood Mall incident where a death row chain was allegedly snatched.
See me in the street, your jewelry, you can keep it. That be our little secret.
On the track Going Back to Cali, Biggie addresses his beef with the rappers in LA that violate him, says that he will annihilate them.
All I got is beef with those that violate me. I shall annihilate thee.
On the track Long Kiss Goodnight, he once again sent subliminals at Tupac. He references dungarees, which Tupac was always seen wearing.
Please, blood flood your dungarees. Laugh now, cry later. I rhyme greater.
Laugh now, cry later could be an allusion to two tattoos on Tupac's back, which say smile now and cry later. The second verse starts off with more shots at Pac.
Aiming that, you maniac, put my name in rap. Apart the game is that, like they hustle backwards.
The outro, Puffy had some words for Suge, Tupac, and the rest of Death Row. After that, Suge and Puffy would go on to still have a disdain for each other, but I feel like I should end it here, being that nothing else was directly said by Tupac or Biggie. Usually, I end the video asking the viewers, who do you think won the beef? But in this video, we'll leave that out. No one won. We lost two of the greatest rappers of all time. So this video is dedicated to Tupac and the notorious B.I.G. May you both rest in peace.